Hi, it's Lee from colouringqueen.net, and I hope you're all doing well today. I hope you're excited for the holiday season and you've done all your shopping and really looking forward to the break at the end of the year, whatever you might celebrate. So today I'm finishing my picture from Animal Fantasy Season, my gorgeous Japanese colouring book. Now I started this one a while back, so I'll leave a link to the first part in the description box below. I started it for my Hello Christmas colour along, so I'm finally finishing that up. So I'll get there. I didn't actually manage to colour a Halloween picture. Both the pictures I coloured for the Hello Christmas colour along were both Christmas themed. But anyway, at least I've done it. And that was my challenge for myself, was to colour a picture for these colour alongs. So at least I can tick that box. So I finally got my little bit of Christmas shopping done too, and I am ready to start the wrapping process. So I don't think I'll pop them under the tree just yet, because Millie seems to have taken that spot. She's sleeping there permanently. And here's a pic where she is the cutest Christmas present ever. So I'll give her a few more days of her favourite spot under the tree before I put the presents under it over the weekend. But anyway, she's just too cute to move her out of that spot. And the girl that owns Billy, the little dog that I mind, she's had her Christmas tree up for about 6 weeks now. And last week she's had COVID, so I haven't seen her or Billy since she tested positive. But she kept in contact, and I texted her to see if she needs anything. And thankfully, I've got Billy back today because I've really missed that little cutie pie. I feel like she's actually my part-time dog. And her poor little owner, she doesn't have any family in Australia. She moved here from New Zealand about a year ago. And I think it might actually be her first Christmas here. So, anyway, I had this idea to cheer her up, and please tell me if this is weird. So, every day for the last few weeks, when I go over to her place to pick up Billy in the morning, I notice that there's always a new box that's been delivered, and the next day there are all these beautiful wrapped little tiny presents under the tree. So, on each of the little presents, they are labelled either to her cat or to Billy, her little dog, with love from Mum. So I thought it would be hilarious if the cat and the dog gave her some presents. So I nipped up to the shop and I found some cute Scotch Terrier shaped biscuits, as Billy is part Scotch Terrier and part Bichon Frise. And I also got some nice chocolates. And I'm going to wrap the biscuits up with a tag on it, like, to Mummy from Billy, and the chocolates with to Mummy from the cat. Now, I want to try and find the same wrapping paper that she's used, but I really can't see it anywhere. I don't think they're selling it anymore. It seems to be out of stock. But I wanted to use the same paper so she wouldn't notice the extras under the tree until Christmas. Now, so I don't know if this is my warped sense of humour or not, but every time I think of her looking at these presents from her pets, it just cracks me up. And so I hope it doesn't seem weird or creepy, and I hope it comes off as being cute and thoughtful. And hopefully I'll find some wrapping paper so it'll look kind of similar under the tree, and she won't notice until Christmas Day. But do tell me, is it weird? Is it creepy? Or is it more cute and thoughtful? I think it's actually really funny, and I can just imagine her on Christmas, provided I can get this right wrapping paper, going, oh my God, my cat and my dog have given me Christmas presents. But I mean, I guess that's just me. I have a weird sense of humour sometimes. Anyway, so let me know if you think I'm weird or not, and then I might have to rethink these and eat some Scotch finger biscuits myself, or Scotch Terrier biscuits. So we actually had hoped that David's mother and brother were coming up just after Christmas. That's been arranged for months now. But unfortunately, it's been postponed. Unfortunately, David's brother has had COVID again, and this time he is really struggling to recover from it. They actually didn't tell us that he'd had COVID until yesterday. So, anyway, I guess they were hoping that, they wouldn't need to tell us. But anyway, he's struggling to recover from it. And he was struggling the first time he had it. So, anyway, they're hopeful that they might fill up to the trip by New Year's Eve, but until then, we're just playing it by ear. He's got over it now. He's tested negative from it, but as I said, it's more like a flu now. And I still have the eye infection, and at the moment, I'm just going to keep using the ointment that I've been prescribed, but it's not making any difference. But at this stage, getting an appointment with a doctor in the time frame that I need to give Buddy his medication, it's just not working for me. So I'll go back to the doctor after the holiday season is over, and this time I'm going to see my doctor and not mess around with these other people. It's just a waste of money and time. So this is the last time I'll chat with you before Christmas. So I will be uploading other videos, but this will be my last chatty one. So I thought we'd have a Christmas-themed crime. And because it's only a small crime, I've thrown in a bit of Santa history as well. So one thing that most people associate with Christmas is Santa Claus, the jolly character popular in Western countries. And it's actually based on Saint Nicholas, a saint from Europe. And he was said to be from what is now known as Turkey. And he was a bishop in the 4th century. He was later canonised and became St. Nicholas, or St. Nick, as he was known for short, was well known for his kindness, and he's the patron saint of children and sailors. So by the 17th century, St. Nick's popularity had actually dwindled in Europe, except for, funnily enough, the Netherlands. Now, in the Netherlands, they actually held an annual feast of St. Nicholas. And during this feast, the tradition was for parents to leave gifts out for their children, and St. Nick, he'd get the credit as gift giver. Now, during this time, St. Nick wore his red-pointed bishop's hat, and instead of a sleigh, he had a donkey. And Dutch children would leave hay in their clogs for the donkey to eat, and that by morning, the hay would be replaced with gifts. Now, it's said that the Dutch colonists brought the traditions of St. Nick to the US with them in 1664 when they settled in New Amsterdam, which is now known as New York City, the city that never sleeps. So from there, the knowledge of St. Nick really expanded into other English-speaking countries. Now, later on, a writer called Washington Irving, he published a book on the history of New York, and in that book were many of these traditional Dutch stories. And the book actually referenced Santa Claus, which was an adaptation of the Dutch version of St. Nick. Now, in the book, this character was described as flying a wagon across the skies and dropping presents down the chimneys for good children. Now, by this time, St. Nick's qualities were sort of amalgamated for some reason, which I couldn't find, with Nordic folk tales. And instead of being the all-kind St. Nick, he actually had a bit of a darker side, in that this new St. Nick actually punished children who behaved badly, and he rewarded those that were good. So the naughty and nice list basically was born, and some of us just can't catch a break with that list. Now, the book was a success, and gradually the stories in it were adapted by the locals, as well as the Dutch, who soon combined them with their own traditions. And Santa Claus, with the English accent, soon became Santa Claus. So Santa at this stage was usually drawn as a tall and thin man. He had a long robe on like a bishop and a pointed bishop's hat with a straight beard. In 1823, so moving along in history, the very popular poem "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" was published anonymously in New York in the Troy Centennial newspaper. Now, there is actually some controversy about who actually wrote the poem. It has been credited to Clement Moore, but it is believed that it was originally written as a story for his children. Clement was said to have written the poem for himself, just for his family, and he never intended for it to be published, but it was published apparently by a family member, and he was very inspired by his friend, Washington Irving's book, that guy that wrote the book about the history of New York and included those stories. Now, he modified the story a little bit to account for English backgrounds. So the clogs became stockings because, you need them in winter if you're in England. And the wagon became a mini sleigh pulled by 8 mini reindeer who were all named except for Rudolph. And this was a nod to the horse-drawn sleigh that was a common means of transportation for the English. And they had bells on them, those horse and cart type arrangements. Anyway, he replaced the horses with reindeer, and that sort of set the scene that Santa was from somewhere cold, like the North Pole, cold and icy. And others actually say that this poem wasn't written by Clement Moore at all. It was actually written by a guy called Henry Livingston Jr. Now, members of Livingston's family actually claim that the poem had been told to their children as early as 1807, so 14, 15 years before it was published. Now, a book has even been written about this controversy by an English professor called MacDonald Jackson. And in another book about the topic, there was a forensic linguist and another English professor that also concluded that Livingston was the actual author. There's even a website set up by one of the descendants of Livingston that has some more information on the issue. Livingston often published his poetry anonymously as well, so that kind of adds to it. So, of course, there are others in the Clement camp as well, with their own experts and English professors and historical document experts who are adamant that Clement Moore is the author. Now, Livingston died in 1828, and he never claimed that he was the author of the poem. But in 1837, 14 years after that poem was published, one of Moore's friends actually outed Moore as the author. And 7 years later, Moore himself acknowledged that and sort of basically claimed authorship because he included it in a book of poems containing a collection of poems that he actually published. Anyway, who knows? I think it was Clement Moore, but a lot of people that are very good with linguistics and historical documents say that the flow of it is more Livingston than Clement Moore. Others dispute that and also point out the fact that actually Clement Moore claimed ownership of it. So who knows? But by 1863, Harper's Weekly magazine hired an illustrator called Thomas Nast to draw a picture of Santa Claus. And at the time, the American Civil War was on, and this picture was to show Santa bringing gifts to the troops. Now, Thomas combined the imagery of the poem of the night before Christmas with the imagery of Uncle Sam, and his artist pen ended up with a plump, cheery fellow in a star-spangled jacket with striped pants and a cap. Nothing like the Santa that we know, and nothing like the original way that St. Nick was portrayed. So for 40 years, this was the image that Thomas drew when asked to draw Santa. But over the time, the stars went away and so did the stripes. They were replaced with a plain suit. Sometimes that suit was red and sometimes it was green. Now, from the 1920s, Coca-Cola began using imagery of Santa in its advertising campaigns, and these images looked very similar to the ones that Thomas Nast had drawn. And the Christmas advertising proved very successful and popular with Coca-Cola. And by 1931, they'd actually commissioned an ad agency and artist called Haddon Sundblom to create a new Christmas campaign. They wanted to show Santa as this wholesome, approachable, magical man rather than a guy in a costume. And you can see that this sort of imagery would be very appealing in the non-alcoholic beverage market. So going back to the Night Before Christmas poem, Haddon became inspired by the lines in it that described Santa Claus as the jolly old elf who dressed in red furs. And so his concept and his idea of a new Santa was born. And in fact, Haddon used a live model, which was one of his friends, Lou Prentice. And after his death, he actually based the imagery on himself. He'd look in the mirror and basically draw himself. And sometimes if those drawings were off, like a belt was on the wrong way, Coca-Cola would get complaints saying, "Why have you changed Santa?" So anyway, from 1931 to 64, Haddon produced images for Coca-Cola, advertised with Santa, producing this sweet imagery of him delivering toys, reading letters from kids, and of course raiding the fridge and drinking a Coca-Cola, as delivering presents is very thirsty work. Now, little has changed with Santa over the years, although sometimes when he appears, say in Australia, he might swap out the trousers and the furry boots for a pair of shorts and thongs, or flip-flops as you might call them across the pond. And sometimes in other countries he might look a little bit different, and the things that you might leave out for Santa, like carrots and cookies and milk, might be a bit different depending on where you live. It might be porridge or a carrot, cookies. Depending on where you live, people leave different things. I would love to know what you leave out for Santa and the reindeer if you believe in the magical man. So now we know a little bit more about this chap that we let into our homes each year. Let's talk about today's story, which involves a bad Santa. When most of us see Santa dressed up, or see someone dressed up as Santa Claus, you tend to think good thoughts. We know, of course, that it's not the real Santa. There's only one real Santa, and he's at the North Pole. But we tend to look at these people as actors who are out doing a job or at an event pretending to be Santa and basically spreading some joy and shining a little bit of light on someone's day. And for this reason, we tend not to be suspicious as we associate the red Santa suit with good intentions and positivity. Although I've got to say, many people are terrified of Santa, and you often see kids screaming in shopping centres that they don't want to get on this strange guy's lap. But, a lot of us love Santa as well. So, staff and customers on a warm spring Saturday in November of 2014 at a post office in Oak Park in Melbourne had these really positive thoughts when they seen Santa saunter into the post office. It was Saturday morning, the post office was open, and they opened then until lunchtime, allowing customers to post their parcels on the weekend. It's a really busy time of year, lots of Christmas cards and packages being sent out in the lead up to Christmas, and hey, even Santa might need help delivering packages by Australia Post, who knows? Couriers weren't as popular back then in 2014. I mean, nowadays you just get DHL onto the job. But anyway, about 11:30 a.m, in walked Santa Claus, complete with long flowing white beard and of course a matching red sack with white fur trim. He looked the part, but this Santa wasn't in the spirit of giving, but receiving. While staff thought that Santa was perhaps going to hand out some lollies or candy to staff and customers in the post office, Santa had other ideas. The sack was empty, and he wanted it filled up with cold, hard cash. Santa, sporting sunglasses indoors, demanded money to be put in the sack, which he placed on the counter. Staff were in total shock and they were a bit slow to hand over the money, so Santa took it upon himself to jump on the counter and he helped himself to the cash in the register. Not content with just this one register's worth of money, he then went to the next counter and he yelled at staff demanding money and that they open the safe. It doesn't seem that Santa relied on a weapon, but maybe just goodwill and shock value. After filling his sack with money, the 182 centimetre Santa slid off the counter and he started to make his escape, but his red Santa pants started to fall down and they revealed the ordinary khaki pants underneath. This clearly was not the real Santa, but an imposter who had just made his way to the naughty list. He made his escape in a cream-coloured Jeep Compass rather than the traditional sleigh and reindeer, and detectives from nearby Moreland Crime Investigation Unit were able to identify the escape vehicle, but sadly, the registration plates, when checked, they were actually stolen. Thankfully, no one was harmed or injured in this robbery, although staff and customers were left shaken up as you would expect. And fortunately, the whole thing was caught on CCTV camera footage. But despite that, and despite a call for witnesses, the fake Santa has not been caught. Now, you can see from the video footage photo here why this robber might be a bit hard to find. So I guess it's been, what, now 8 years, and this Santa still has not been caught. So I guess the moral of the story here is that there's only one real Santa. And beware of imposters, because they're just men in costumes. And if you see this Santa here, make sure you call Crime Stoppers and dob him in, because, this is giving all the Santas a bad name. And when I was researching the crimes that Santas had committed, some of them were too graphic for this channel. And it really makes you think how many crimes that people commit in costume and whatnot. Like, some of them that I looked at were just far too graphic and violent for this channel and things that I talk about here. But it makes you think how heartbreaking it must be for people that witness Santa doing something inappropriate like that. But from a criminal's point of view, you can see why they choose the outfit. Like, really, you've got gloves on, you've got boots, you're covered head from toe, you've got a fake beard, and if you're wearing sunglasses, there really isn't a lot about you that is identifiable. And with the gloves, then there's no fingerprints, no skin cells for DNA matching and things like that. So it really makes you think how many people are using the fact that things are in costume to commit criminal acts. The range of things that I discovered from really bad Santas was unbelievable, from petty crimes to carjackings, home invasions, stealing helicopters. There are some really bad Santas around. One of them was a bank robber in Tennessee, if I recall correctly, who actually demanded money because he needed to pay the elves. Now, everyone knows the elves don't get payment. They're not like regular work. There's no elf union, so clearly this was also a bad Santa who came to a very bad end, I might add. But it is just amazing how many people take the opportunity to dress up and commit crimes. So I guess, there is a moral to the story there, and just be careful, around some of all these Santas. Some of them are not on the nice list. But anyway, I hope you have all got positive Santa experiences. So hopefully none of you are on Santa's naughty list this year. I'm sure you're not. I'm sure that you're on Santa's nice list. One of the things that has always confused me about Santa Claus is that we tend as a culture, I don't know about elsewhere in the world, I'm only speaking from personal experience, but we tend as a culture to spend like 8 years or so of a child's life telling them that Santa Claus exists, which of course he does. But then when the child reaches a certain age, we just automatically say, no, he doesn't exist, it was us all along. And it seems so weird to me that we spend all this time trying to get a child to believe in something and then immediately taking that away when they're a certain age. I would really love to know why we do that and why it's appropriate. Like, yeah, I'd really love to know your thoughts on that. Like, do we just take it away because we feel that children are now able to understand that this was not a magical being all along and it was just them? Like, why do we take the magic away at a certain age? That's what I would really like to know. And because I don't have children, I've never had to go through this. So I would really like to know your thoughts on this, getting the kids to believe in Santa and then telling them, no, sorry, doesn't exist. And I, of course, still believe in Santa, so I don't want any negativity towards Santa. I still believe he's out there. I just believe that I have had a long time on the naughty list, and one day I will get off that naughty list and onto the nice list. But one thing I do agree with that I've seen in more recent years is parents telling their children that their big presents that they receive on Christmas are actually from their parents or grandparents or friends or whatever, and only the smaller presents are from Santa Claus. Is I really think that's a nice idea, because a lot of times when kids go back to school or they see their friends and they get big expensive gifts and they say they're from Santa, and some of those children are in the same financial bracket, or their parents may not be able to afford things in that price bracket or in that budget, and then the kids are left wondering why Santa likes their friend more than them, and what did they do to not get as expensive of a present or as good as a present or the present that they asked for. So I really think it's nice that the smaller presents are from Santa and then the larger presents are from the parents, so that children understand that it's nothing to do with them that they didn't get a more expensive or the present that they asked for from Santa. But I would really love to know what you guys think. Personally, I think it's a good idea, this sort of phase that I'm seeing here in Australia. I know down the road from me there's a couple of children that aren't very well off, and they told me that they don't expect anything from Santa or from their parents, so I can imagine when they go back to school it must be a bit heartbreaking, when you see what other people get gifted and whatnot. But I would love to know what you think, because I am certainly no expert in the area, having not have children, and as I said, being on Santa's naughty list for so long, it's absolutely ridiculous. I will get off that list one day. I'm going to leave it here for the day, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for all of your support this year and for watching my videos and the relationships that I've developed with many of you over the years. And I just want to wish you all the very best for the holiday season, whatever you might celebrate. If you believe in Santa like I do, I hope that your Christmas is magical. But whatever you might celebrate or choose not to celebrate, like if you're into Festivus like on Seinfeld, whatever you choose at the end of the year to mark the holiday season, I hope that it is enjoyable for you and that you have a lovely day that's full of relaxation and good times and beautiful memories. And until we speak next time after Christmas for us here in Australia, I wish you all the very best and happy colouring and stay safe.